Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. Ladies Tea, welcome back for another episode. Tonight, we're joined by host of the Sideline Sanity podcast, Michelle Tafoya, and host of Unapologetic Live, PragerU's Amala Epinobi. Michelle and Amala, obviously, you guys have both been on before separately. We're all here together now. I'm so stoked because I think both of you are just such impressive women, so smart, have so many different talents and things we can talk about. And I just got to start with football, if that's okay, real quick, Michelle. First of all,
Yes.
Who do you like in the Super Bowl? I got to get your take.
Oh, gosh. I was just having this discussion with my son out there, who is a 49ers fan, so he's a little disappointed. But as he says, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, and that is true. And this kid is magical. He just manages to get things done. What Philly has, however, is a really good defense and a really good run offense. I think they've scored more rushing touchdowns this season than almost any other season in NFL history. They're really good. It's going to be so good. It is hard to bet. It's hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes. But what I like about this is just two young quarterbacks. One just starting to make a name for himself, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick. We'll see if the magic continues.
I know. Amala, what do you think? Are you into football at all?
No, I just learned who was playing in the Super Bowl right this very moment.
It just happened right now. You were this many years old when you figured out who's in the 2023 Super Bowl.
Exactly, and I understood nothing that Michelle just said, so I'm here for the ride.
We won't get too deep into football. I'm a huge football fan, Michelle. I think you and I have talked about this before. I'm very into it. My husband and I, of course, watched both games. And Joseph Osai, who, if you didn't see this play, Amala, I'll just explain it to you real quick. He's a defensive end for the Bengals, who Kansas City played. And it was because of a last-second penalty that Kansas City was able to win, basically, and it was this guy's fault. And I felt so sad for him, Michelle. On the sideline, my husband was actually pulling for the Chiefs, and then he goes, God, I wish the Bengals would have won just because of this guy. It's the saddest thing, because he knows forever he might have cost his team a trip to the Super Bowl. It was so sad.
I believe that games are 4 quarters long for a reason. You have all 60 minutes to play. But this was what they call a timely error. In other words, it didn't happen in the second quarter. It happened right at the end of the game and put Kansas City in easy field goal position to win the game. But watching him sob on the bench, it crushed me. Absolutely
heartbreaking.
Crushed me. This is a young guy. I was talking to someone earlier today who said that he once cost his team a trip to the Final Four in basketball by missing a shot or committing a foul. I can't remember how, but he said he doesn't go 2 days without thinking about it.
I was going to say, you never forget those things. It's almost like when you have a trauma that happens and you can't sleep for days on end because you keep replaying it. I mean, I don't know when this poor guy is going to play again. And Amala, if you can just imagine this giant football player, this big tough guy, defensive guy who's sitting there on the sidelines crying. It was the saddest thing I've ever seen. I was like, God, I wish I was there to give him a hug.
I know.
I'm just giving him a shout out.
I hope he senses it. I really hope he senses a lot of us who have been shouting him out and saying, and I know his teammates were trying to console him. He's inconsolable right now. And it may be that way. What my hope is that somewhere out of this awful fire he's existing in, he gets stronger.
I hope so. Well, God, you always know what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. No one knows that better than people in our family, by the way. We'll move on away from football because Amala's about to sign off. She's like, I really don't know what's going on. Something that I don't watch, I do love to watch football. Something I do not like to watch anymore is Saturday Night Live. I mean, quite frankly, I don't even know the last time I tuned in. I stumbled across it on Saturday night, around midnight, and I honestly tried to watch it for a second. It's almost unwatchable. But then I saw this skit, Amala, that they did it was the document scandal, right? And it was the FBI coming out and talking about other documents they found at Mike Pence's house. Then they have someone come out and joke that Kamala Harris had avoided a probe because Joe Biden doesn't trust her enough to give her a pen, let alone trust her with top secret papers. I don't know. What's your take on SNL these days? They can't be funny even, I mean, if they try their hardest. Bless their hearts.
Yeah, I mean, gone are the days of Chevy Chase and Debbie Downer, and just when SNL was at its peak, its golden era, and it's just really, you have to struggle through to watch the show anymore. They are so partial to their partisan politics, and they can't help but let their conservative audience, or even just their sensible, rational audience, know. They have to let them know that they dislike them and that they have a certain skew in their politics. And they did so with that very sketch that you're talking about. I will say the only good thing about it is when they had the FBI agent come and giggle about how he was in Obama's house and Obama is so cool, because everybody treats Barack Obama with kid's glove because he's so charismatic.
Yeah, they actually had Michelle. I don't know if you watched this skit. The guy that Amma was talking about, he comes out and he goes, "I was there, and Barack Obama opened the door, and then Beyonce called him, and he didn't even answer." Like, they couldn't make Obama cooler, even if they tried. That it's like, I wonder what that's like. Do we ever think that there will be a conservative who gets treated like that? Because I don't think so. I'm still going to hold my breath on that.
No,
one.
Don't hold your breath. I don't think it'll happen. Is it the same Beyonce, by the way, who just performed in Dubai for $25 million, $24 million, where, they throw homosexuals off buildings and all that kind of thing? I mean, again, that was such a moment where I saw this whole thing about Beyonce and taking the 24 mil and people saying, "Oh, but just by going there, she's made Dubai more gay." It's like, no, you really don't get it, do you?
Ridiculous.
It's so, yeah, those are the cool kids, right?
Yeah.
Those are the cool kids.
I mean, but the scary thing is those are the people that they're telling our kids, our youth in America, those are the people they're supposed to look up to and think are cool and try and emulate in whatever way they possibly can. And I mean, I say it all the time, but I think there are so many people who are conservatives or have conservative values, but they don't even realize it because there is such a push on social media, within Hollywood, within the movies, within obviously mainstream media, to push our children and our younger generations, towards the Democrats. I mean, that's all they do all the time. And to think that these people are the great ones, and it's frightening. I'll tell you what, as a mom of young kids, I don't know what it's going to be like. Michelle, how old is your son that you were just talking about?
I've got a 17-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. But see, it's Amala, and who gives me hope.
It is Amala. Yeah.
Like she figured it out. Amala, you figured it out. I hope that now people of your generation and even younger are going to think, this woke stuff's getting old. I think I'm going to go try and stand out by being conservative.
What do you think, Amala? Could we get there?
Yeah. The issue is the way that I figured it out is by working for the left and getting so deeply entrenched in it that I just realized this is not the way for me. So how many other young people have to do exactly that is the question. But I do think what you're saying about TV and media is so true. You talk to people on an issue by issue basis, and you'll find that a lot of them lean pretty conservatively in the things that they think and feel. Right. But they're watching TV, they're seeing these characters, they're seeing people like Barack Obama and Beyonce and Rihanna, and they're thinking that leftism is the only option for them.
Yeah, it's so sad. But I think you're right. Maybe people have to get really entrenched in it to realize. One of those people, by the way, I think is Bill Maher. I don't know what's going on with him, but for the past year and a half, Bill Maher has kind of been the voice of reason on the Democrat side. I mean, he's a self-proclaimed Democrat. He'll tell you that all day long. But he has pushed back on a lot of things. And he had Bryan Cranston, who, I just love from Breaking Bad. Isn't so depressing, by the way? I find that, I'll kind of look up all these actors or actresses after I, get into a show. And I'm like, please don't be super crazy liberal.
It's a big mistake.
They all are, right?
They all break our hearts. They all break our hearts.
It's the saddest. What a tragedy. But Bryan Cranston apparently was on with Bill Maher, and they butted heads over critical race theory. And you had Bill Maher saying, this is not, what we should be focusing on here in America, and Bryan Cranston pushing back. It does kind of give me hope, Amala, that there are people out there like Bill Maher willing to stand up to, that kind of crazy woke ideology like that.
Right. That's going to be the true mover here, is people who are on the liberal end of things going, wait a second, I agree with a lot of what you do, but that right there is too far. And you'll see in that interview with Bryan Cranston, they go back and forth. He's really trying to convince him. And Bryan Cranston, bless him. is very much expressing the same beliefs that conservatives express. We're saying, yeah, we should talk about our history. We should talk about the transgressions. We should acknowledge it. He just thinks that critical race theory is the way to do that. And I think he's confused about what critical race theory actually is.
Yes.
That's the problem. Is so many people... sorry, go ahead, Michelle. I think so many people fall into that category and they've been told that it's something different than it actually is.
I think they think it's Black history, but it's so much more than that. It is a theory of these two classes of people, oppressors and oppressed. And it's all deemed by, white supremacy and skin color. And I've had these conversations with a lot of smart people. It's like, you know what? I remember writing my report about the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln when I was 8 years old. I was being taught this stuff. We've always taught this stuff. Now, if we twist it so much that we turn it into this ideologically framed debate and not history and not based on historical fact, now we're screwed. And I think that's what these people think they're standing up for, is the teaching of our wrongs. No, that's been taught. That's continually taught. And I want it to continue to be taught. But when you twist it and you start to bring in some alternative facts, that's when you lose the rest of us. And so I think that some people are well-intentioned, but they miss the mark when it comes to the facts.
Well, and I think the problem I have as a parent I send both of my kids to school every day and I trust that what they are being taught would reflect my values. The problem I have is that within critical race theory, it teaches that if you are white, you are inherently privileged, and if you are not white, then you are inherently disadvantaged. And the idea that anyone is born with an advantage or a disadvantage, and you should look at race as just the way that they're trying to frame it, I think is terrible. We should judge people based on who they are as a human being, on their merits, on the value that they bring to a job, to our friendships, to whatever it is. And I just don't like the idea that I might send my kids to school and they're going to be told that because they are white children that they've done something wrong. They haven't. Yeah. And I think that's a problem a lot of parents have with critical race theory.
As they should. I mean, it's a totally divisive set of works. And if you go back to the roots of critical race theory and look at some of the foundational things that these theorists are writing about, it's completely ridiculous. And a lot of people who support critical race theory, they're saying this is an avenue that we're going to take to progress out of, the racist era in America, or Jim Crow 2.0, as President Joe Biden would call it. Oh. But if you look into critical race theory, they're saying that racism will continue to infect America for eras to come because it's baked into our country. If that's the case, then what are we progressing out of if we're stuck in it?
That's so true. It's crazy, all this stuff. By the way, speaking of critical race theory and all this, 1619 Project, apparently there is a Netflix series that's coming out.
Have you guys? Hulu. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So by the way, here's the craziest thing. So whenever I go on and I'm trying to find something to watch and just kind of zone out, that keeps coming up to the top as my recommended, the 1619 Project. But see, do we think that if we had an alternative to that, that would be at the top of Hulu being pushed and being, told to everybody, this is recommended for you? I don't think so. I mean, I think the goals are very obvious here. And it's a little bit frightening. And then you have I think it's in LA where they're trying to pay some exorbitant fee, like $250,000 in reparations. Is that right? Per Black citizen? I mean, this kind of stuff, where do we end? I feel like with all of it. And why are we so obsessed with race all of the time? I'm a little lost on it, but the Hulu 1619 Project, would either of you watch that?
I would not, because I've done a lot of looking into the 1619 Project and listened to people who counter it. And the people who counter it make a whole lot more sense. I've seen people critique the first few episodes, or at least two of the Hulu thing, where there are flat out factual errors, and it's interesting to look at that and to listen to other historians. She is not a historian. She is a Hannah. What's her whole name again?
Nicole Hannah Jones.
Nicole Hannah Jones. I apologize. I should probably know that, but it just goes to show that she's a journalist, and she's come up with this project as a way to forward a theory that, again, is really, really divisive and also trivializes the founding of this country. And she makes a lot of erroneous arguments. I mean, arguments that just aren't based on fact. And so many people have challenged her to sit down and debate. Let's have a civil debate over this. Let's hear your idea, but let me counter you and let's have this discussion together. She won't do it. Why?
Well, there you go. I mean, most of the time, if you know that perhaps what you're trying to push out there is not based in fact, then you don't want to do that. And I find, by the way, it's commonplace for Democrats. Look at the midterm elections. How many didn't debate? You had or waited to the last minute to debate. You had the Arizona governor's race, no debate there. You had for Senate in Pennsylvania between Dr. Oz and John Fetterman, what they waited until, there were like 10 days left in the election to do a debate. They don't want to debate anything, Amala, because when you don't have great ideas, I guess it's hard to defend them.
Yeah, I think that's really the backbone of it. But they'll come and say, oh, it's not because I don't have great ideas or because I can't defend my own ideology. It's because they don't deserve a seat at the table. And I should not be charitable enough as to show up and have a debate with these kind of people. And they use their lack of consistency and their lack of effort and support of their own information to demonize the other side.
Yeah, it's crazy. Also in LA, by the way, I'm sure you guys saw this, something that I find kind of mind-boggling. The LAPD chief of police bans the thin blue line flag. Now it's banned in Los Angeles. So I'm really trying to figure this out. Apparently, people were complaining about it and saying that it represented racist and bigoted views. I always thought that the thin blue line flag was about the fact that, there is this thin line that exists between complete chaos and, societal disarray and that of having the police there to keep everyone together. That's what I always understood that it meant. But I don't know. Michelle, what are your thoughts on the thin blue line flag?
Absolutely furious when I first read this story in the last couple of weeks. And Amala, I think, is physically closer to LA than I am.
That's true.
Even though I grew up there, and in part because I grew up there, it disgusts me. I remember what kind of a place California used to be, and it's so far from that. But because a person, or maybe a couple of people, walked into a police precinct and were triggered by this flag, this guy decided, this chief of police, against all the wishes of his officers, by the way, decided to take down something. That's like saying, the American flag is really triggering people in the Capitol building.
Well, it does.
Maybe we should take it down. To me, it's the equivalent.
Yeah.
Because it is their symbol in a police department, and the fact that we again are just catering and caving to these vocal minorities about their being triggered and upset by a symbol or by a word. When are we going to stop caving?
Oh, great question. Amala, are you in LA?
I am in LA, and I'm actually very closely acquainted with several officers who work for the LAPD. So I called them as soon as I saw this story break, and they're just disheartened. They're already feeling demoralized working their jobs and demotivated by not only leadership, but just the country at large. And they said, well, this is just another hit to support that we should have for our own profession. And what's really interesting that this is happening in LA with the LAPD police chief is that the actual thin blue line flag was popularized by the LAPD in the 1950s by a police chief known as Bill Parker. And he said exactly what you said, Laura, that it represents that thin line between law and order and just complete destruction of society. Yeah. So what a sign of the times that with how our metropolitan areas are declining, that we would get rid of a flag that represents that.
And on some level, you guys, I feel like in all these local stories, there is so much chaos being sown because ultimately they want to say, we've got to have bans, we've got to have fixes, and they've got to come from central planning, i.e. Washington, D.C. And Washington has to put federal laws in everywhere and take away all this power from localities. I feel like that. Maybe I'm just imagining that, but I keep seeing these parts of our lives being more and more controlled by the federal government, which was not the plan. It was quite the opposite.
Yeah, no, I mean, that it's antithetical to everything upon which this country was founded. I mean, it was supposed to be that the power was with the people in the states, not a centralized federal government. But Michelle, I think you're right. I think, gosh, how can you not feel like that? Look at the censoring of conservative news outlets like we just saw happen last week, where AT&T's DirecTV canceled Newsmax. They took OAN down. They canceled Newsmax. And I mean, basically, you're left with Fox News as the only conservative, television channel you could possibly get on cable. But I think a lot of people look at that and they say, wait a minute, this feels frighteningly close to George Orwell's 1984. It feels like we are headed into a dystopian society where, you are controlled by Big Brother, by government, by whatever you want to call it. The fact that these entities have the power that they do to censor, I guess, dissenting opinion and thought, because clearly they're on the side of the Democrats oftentimes. I mean, that is a really scary place to be, I think, Amala, for so many of us in America. Were you surprised by that when they canceled Newsmax?
I'd love to say I was surprised, but absolutely not. No. Yeah, this is typical. And of course, they're going to come out and they've already been running excuses for this. Well, we're doing it to, cut corners. We need to, save our funding and our fees and all this stuff. But Newsmax was doing pretty well, as I hear, as far as their ratings and people going to actually watch the show. I think they said the fourth top channel. So it's just ridiculous that they're going to try and throw excuses at this. They should come out and say and call it like it is. We are deplatforming people that we disagree with because we're scared that others are going to hear their views and agree with them.
Right. I think, Michelle, for so many of us over the past several years on social media, we've felt obviously censored. I mean, thank goodness that maybe Twitter is headed back in the right direction. And they claim that Donald Trump could be let back on Facebook and Instagram at some point very soon. But, I think you're right. I think that we have kind of had this shift, and maybe it all started with COVID, with the masking. We know that the Biden administration now wants to bring masks back. I don't think legally it's going to stand, but maybe you're right. Were you surprised by that whenever they took Newsmax off?
I'm kind of with Amala on this one, that it's hard to surprise me anymore. Disappointment, yes, because I'm a free speech absolutist. I believe more speech is always better than less, and I can't stand this. And I find it funny too when you bring up social media and something like Twitter, how before Elon Musk bought Twitter, he was the coolest guy on the planet because why? Because of the electric vehicles, which fit into that leftist agenda of, a greener earth. Okay. Now he says, but you know what? I'm for free speech, and I see that being hindered on Twitter. I think I'll buy it. Now all of a sudden they think he's a madman and a traitor and a crazy guy, and they think he's evil. It's just like, don't you see how foolish you look with all of this? I am so glad Elon Musk went through with this purchase and that all of this is coming out. And of course, what's happening? A lot of people are treating the Twitter files, say that 5 times fast, as though they're, nothing to see here. Oh, been there, done that. That's nothing. That's old news. We don't, it is crazy to me. Now, I hope that there are more like-minded people, like the three of us, who are saying, believe your eyes, believe what you see, believe your ears. You're being gaslighted by a lot of people. Get out of it. Don't let them do this to you individually, and don't let them do this to the greatest country on earth.
Gosh, and how, honestly, to be a fly on the wall, to see some of these people on the left melt down, because you're right, they loved Elon Musk with the Teslas, and oh my gosh, what a great thing. And then all of a sudden, for them to flip the script, and he's on the opposite side, it must have really been a show with some of these people. And I mean, we all remember how the people that worked at Twitter, whenever he was even discussing buying it, were in a full panic. Everybody was upset. It was a big problem for them. But you know what? So far, I feel like he's done sort of what he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, he got rid of some of the staff that probably was, I don't know, getting massages or having matcha lattes or whatever they're doing over there, instead of actually working. So, I mean, kudos to him. He's getting the job done. Not that I want to get off of serious information and news, But MILF Manor, I don't know if anyone's
I've heard about this.
Okay.
Yes.
I know.
So
Amala and I are both probably our heads are about to explode, but go ahead.
If you haven't seen it, I actually, just so I could talk about it on this show, watched an episode of MILF Manor. So it is, as you heard it, MILF Manor. It basically is a bunch of moms, and they're like 20 to 25-year-old, I would guess, sons. Obviously, these were very young mothers because they're all great looking, like 50-something-year-old women. And they're all in a house together. Ugh. And the whole goal is for them to like hook up with the other kids. I call them kids, but it is the strangest thing I've ever seen. And I mean, my son's 5, but even at this point, I'm thinking, how awkward would it be? And they put them in these positions where they have to write down, like the episode I watched, they wrote down like their most embarrassing thing or something that their son didn't know about them or the mom didn't know about the son. And it was like really sick and disgusting stuff. I mean, it's very like Oedipus complex. I think it just feels like, did we need to go this far, Amala? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know. Isn't there more entertainment out there?
Yeah, we didn't need to go this far. I certainly didn't need it. I'm sure there's a lot of people out in America who are just sitting on the edge of their seats to watch the show. I am not one of them. And the point has to be made. I mean, imagine this being done in the reverse, where you have older dads staying at a house, dating daughters. It would not fly. It would not fly. But because it's women and we're sexually liberated, you know, we'll allow anything to happen. What this is going to be is just an immense amount of trauma, particularly on the parts of these young men who are staying in this house and doing this, thinking it's something cool to do. Wait till they get 5 years out of this. I don't know what they're going to be like.
I can't imagine, Laura. I mean, your son is 5. My son is 17, so I'm a little bit closer to this, you know.
Like you're almost there. You could almost be on MILF Manor.
One of the boys is 20. One of the boys is 20 on that show.
These are babies. Insane. So it is so gross.
Yeah.
I mean, what I read was that one of the episodes, they had the moms had to touch all the bodies of the boys. The moms were blindfolded and try to identify the son that was there by feeling his chest muscles and arms and all. Okay, this is so disgusting. Amala's point about if the roles were reversed and it was young girls, that is spot on. It would never fly. Ever. This is disgusting. I try to think of these people that would go along and do this.
Well, this is my question. Like, are these, because I'm just thinking about being on any like dating show where you have to like make out on camera or something with people.
I know.
I don't think I could do it. Is this just to get like to become famous?
I think this is that 15 minutes of fame, or, you know, there's probably a paycheck involved. To me, this is just grotesque. And you talk about the people who are going to make time in their lives to watch this. And I want to say to them, and I realize there's some crappy entertainment out there, but Great British Baking Show is really good. Really good. And it's really diverse too. If you want to check off the diversity, it's there in the diversity lane. And sometimes they even use bugs in their baking. So it's all there. But this is like, or read a book. Listen to, I don't know, listen to a podcast like The Right View.
Yes.
Amala's show. This is such a waste of brain cells and time and production cost. And it's disgusting.
It just feels like we're going to hell in a handbasket, quite frankly.
But it'll be one of the most viewed shows of the year, I bet.
Probably so. We're talking about it because I was just so appalled that when I heard about it, I was like, wait a minute, am I hearing this right? Is this accurate? And I thought about the fact too, like if it were the dads with the daughters and like how absolutely appalled people would be and disgusted people would be. But you're right. It's because women are all liberated and we can do whatever we want. We can date whoever. Yeah, we got it. We don't need a show about it. No. But yeah, let's see when the ratings come back, just how disgusting Americans really are and that they're actually tuning into this. And it's TLC. I got to say, TLC has some weird stuff on there. And I'm probably guilty that I like Dr. Pimple Popper.
Oh, do you really? Because I thought that was before this MILF thing came out. I thought Pimple Popper.
That was your gross one?
Well, so gross.
But it's one of those things. And, it's like, I feel like your phone hears you say everything. And I talked about it one time, and then I'm scrolling through Instagram, and like, that's what's populating on my feed is like people getting like blackheads removed. I'm probably going to get them all later on here now. It's gross, but like they get me because I'm like, well, what is that's in this person's head that looks like a horn? You know what I mean?
God, ew,
they get me.
I would have nightmares.
It's a war for attention. That's all this is. We're fighting.
Oh, what are you watching? Michelle's not watching anything on TLC apparently.
Oh, didn't TLC stand for The Learning Channel?
It used to. I know. Does it? Yeah, that's what it said.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're sure learning a lot from them these days. You know what? Me and my boyfriend, we're watching old detective shows like The Mentalist and Monk and stuff like that. That's where we're at. Good, wholesome murder mysteries.
Well,
wholesome murder.
To bring it full circle, I was into Breaking Bad during COVID. That's when everybody was like, "Oh, you have to watch it. You have to watch it," right? And then I did, and then I became a fan, and now I'm highly disappointed.
And now Bryan Cranston has broken your heart.
As usual.
You can't watch anymore.
Never look up their actual opinions. Never look up their actual opinions. I know.
I always scroll through, and I'm like, let me see what's in here.
Are you guys on the Yellowstone bandwagon?
My husband is a big fan. Yeah. You're
a
into
massive
it.
fan. Massive fan. And of the pre what do you call them? The
prequel?
Prequel.
Yeah.
The 18,
happening?
23, those are really good. It's just, I think it's fabulous.
But did you watch, were you a Game of Thrones person?
No, but my husband was. But yeah, no, I couldn't do that.
You were?
I was, I watched it, the last season, not so good. And it's very, very raunchy. So I will say very adult themes in that show, but the plot is good. I'll give him that.
I tried like twice and I couldn't get past like the dragons. I was like, a show with dragons, but everyone loves it. So whenever we have, I'm sure they'll try and shut the world down again for something. Maybe I'll watch it at that point. Just to wrap up, now we talked about Bill Maher, Bryan Cranston talking about critical race theory. Let's face it, the left owns education at this point. You have the teachers unions who are obviously backing all the Democrats. They are the reason I think so many of us look at our educational system here in America and say, wow, I mean, how did we go so far off track? Why is it so bad? My father-in-law this weekend talked about a plan to save education from, and as he put it, the radical left maniacs. I think that this is something that is so smart and something that people have been waiting to hear because we all talk about how bad things have gotten. And again, as someone with children who are of school age, just very beginning of their school careers at this point, it's something I care about greatly. I think for the future of America, Amala, I mean, you're the youngest of us, but this is something that I think is going to speak to people as we head to 2024. And I think it's a great platform for my father-in-law.
Yeah, I think education is going to be at the forefront of a lot of voters' brains as we're getting into this next cycle. And I think what people are looking for is getting rid of critical race theory, or at least talking about it through the framework of this is a theory, and a pretty BS one at that.
Yeah.
Getting rid of gender theory in schools, being transparent when it comes to curriculum, and bringing back academic standards, particularly for students of color. These have all been major issues within education. And I think parents are heated about it.
Yeah. What do you think, Michelle? Is your son about to graduate?
Yeah, he's finishing up his junior year. My daughter enters high school next year. We have grounded them really solidly in this house. And so I have faith. We've had to counter a lot of stuff. They go to school, they come home and we say, well, think about it this way. And why don't we watch
they ask you questions?
Yes. Or they bring home, hey, do you know what happened to this guy at school? And they'll go into a discussion that they had as a group about something that they say may have been racially motivated. And we try to explain why maybe it wasn't racially motivated, how maybe it could have happened to anybody. And that's sort of what we do. It has felt a little bit like a losing cause. However, I think if you raise your kids, not shoving anything down their throat, but showing them, having that civil conversation and showing them the other side of arguments. I'm a big school choice proponent, and I feel like this movement is gaining steam right about now. So I get involved with Ed Choice and a number of other groups because I think that every parent, I don't care where you live, you ought to have the opportunity to send your kid to a school that is right for them. And there needs to be competition. And I think if there were competition, public schools would improve. I do. Yep. But there are some schools in certain neighborhoods. And now that my daughter's playing basketball and we travel around all over the metro to see different schools, it's not right that some of these schools are so vastly different than others. Mm-hmm. And they're all public schools. They should all be funded appropriately. Then why are some just vastly underserved? It sickens me.
Yeah, no parent should be forced to send their child to a school that's failing them, that is not preparing them for their future. Amala, I love your point about this having standards, bringing standards back. Yes. And I mean, the idea that we're not going to give people grades or have standardized testing because it might hurt someone's feelings or whatever the rationale is behind it is outrageous. And it does such a disservice, I think, to our children. And these are the people who are going to take over our country at some point. So people need to sit back and seriously think, if we are not preparing them for what's about to come, if we're keeping them coddled and keeping it all soft and giving them a safe space and a puppy, instead of saying, well, you failed this test and you need to study harder, you don't understand this material, or you need help or whatever it is, they're not going to be prepared for life. And then one day when they take the reins of this country, I mean, God help us, we think it's bad now, just wait. So I think that this is a platform that is going to speak to a lot of people. I think it's something not unlike the governor's race in Virginia that we saw, what was it, 2.5 years ago? That was a big thing for parents. It was all about the schools, all about their children's education. And I think as we head to 2024, I mean, among inflation, the open southern border, our standing on the world stage, gas prices, all of the obvious, this is something I think that will motivate a lot of people to get out and vote. It's just too bad we can't do it sooner rather than later, but we will have to wait. Michelle Tafoya and Amala Ekpunobi, I want to say thank you for joining us here. I wish we had more time, but that is the show, and we'll have you back again because there's a lot to talk about. And thanks to the crazies on the left, I don't think there will ever be an end to all of it. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, here on the
We'll be here.
Everybody at home, as always, thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here next time for more.